Tonight on Ukraine Today, Russia is preparing a new assault on the Kharkiv region. What's going on at the front and what's really happening in Russia's Kursk region? New threats from the Kremlin. Russia's Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev is now talking about a new world war. Double standards in Washington. US Secretary of State Marco Rubio couldn't call Putin a war criminal. The Golden Dome. What do we know about this new American missile defense system and who is meant to protect from whom? Murder in Madrid. A former advisor of Ukraine's fugitive ex-president Yanukovych, Andrei Portnov, has been shot dead in Spain. All that and more, right now, on Ukraine Today. Hi there, we're from Ukraine. I'm Volodymyr Rabchun. Hit that like button, subscribe, and let's get started. Over the past 24 hours, Russia's army has lost at least 870 troops, killed or wounded. Ukraine's defense forces destroyed 4 Russian tanks, 5 armored vehicles, at least 32 artillery systems, and dozens of other military assets. And since the beginning of the Kursk operation, Russian losses have reached more than 63,000 killed and wounded. That's according to President Volodymyr Zelensky in his latest evening address.
Our forces have also managed to significantly increase the exchange fund for Ukraine. The more combat operations we push onto enemy territory, the more it protects our communities. Unfortunately, the Russians are showing no signs of a ceasefire. They are not ready to end the war yet. That means all our pressure tools, all our cooperation with partners, it's absolutely necessary.
Putin has allegedly visited the Kursk region. The Kremlin media is sharing footage. But is it really Putin? And is that even really Kursk? Big question. Here's what we do know for sure. Ukrainian drones have hit a strategic Russian plant in the Oryol region. In the Moscow area, Tula, Saransk, and in the regions of Vladimir and Lipetsk, Russians were so desperate to jam the drones, they completely shut down the internet there. It took them hours to restore communication. At the same time, Russia is preparing a new assault on the Kharkiv region. Troops are building up near the Ukrainian borders. Details in our report.
Another loud night in Russia. Drones attack the Oryol region.
Quiet, quiet, quiet. It's coming. There's going to be an explosion now. Grandpa? It's coming.
Look how it's lying there.
There it is. Look, Grandpa, over there. The main thing is, not towards us, please.
The Volkov plant for the production of semiconductor devices came under attack.
There's going to be an explosion now, Grandpa.
Look, I think that's at the plant.
That's already, what, the 8th one?
Meanwhile, there is fierce fighting on the front. According to the General Staff, since the start of May 20th, there have been 129 combat clashes. The occupiers are attacking most heavily in the Pokrovsk direction. The Ukrainian armed forces are holding back the assaults. The Russians also tried to break through the border in the Kharkiv region.
Today, the largest number of combat engagements is taking place in the Pokrovsk direction. We can see that here the enemy is clearly trying to use their favorite tactic of forming pincers in order to encircle this settlement and accordingly to advance further in the operational direction. We are saying that a rather difficult situation may develop near Mirnograd and Kostiantinivka because we are talking about Toretsk and Chasiv Yar. It is obvious that the enemy's priorities are determined by their attempts to achieve the strategic goal that has been set for the Russians since the beginning of the full-scale invasion, that is, the complete occupation of Donetsk and Luhansk regions.
In addition, the Russian occupiers continue to use banned chemical weapons against the Ukrainian armed forces. Ukrainian intelligence officers have published a corresponding intercepted enemy conversation.
A lighter is useless if it doesn't ignite. If there's proper chemicals, we can try using chemicals. If there isn't even a single 1,000 VOGs there, or maybe just 1 or 2 VOGs.
Again with the same stuff?
Yes. For now, we don't have any other task.
The Russian army has never followed the rules of warfare or the use of certain types of weapons or weapons of mass destruction. Accordingly, this is far from the first case of chemical weapons being used, so unfortunately there is nothing surprising about this. Yes, such cases have been recorded, are being recorded, and will probably continue to be recorded in the future, because the Russians use absolutely everything to achieve their goals. everything that is prohibited.
And the news of the day for Russia, the dictator Putin allegedly visited the Kursk region, where he met with volunteers and visited the Kursk nuclear power plant too. Kremlin propagandists even published a video with their leader, but it is impossible to identify him in it.
A purely propagandistic move. We understand perfectly well that once again, Putin wants to show that the situation is under control and to demonstrate that the Kursk region is supposedly cleared of the defense forces, which does not correspond to reality today. This raises a logical question. Who then is the Russian Air Force or artillery striking in the Kursk region? Are they really striking their own people, or were they aiming at Putin? So, to avoid situations like this, I think it's quite likely that certain Mosfilm studios were used to create the scene shown in the propaganda video.
And while Putin is supposedly strolling around Kursk, Ukraine and the Czech Republic have agreed to cooperate in training Ukrainian F-16 pilots. The United States has also not stopped supplying weapons to Ukraine. All aid previously approved by Congress continues to flow, U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio said. At the same time, Trump refused to support sanctions against Russia because he wants to make business deals with Putin, according to the New York Times.
I hope that our diplomacy still manages to maintain that level of diplomatic skill, and that our country's military and political leadership, maneuvering between the moods of the leader, or rather the head of the White House, continues to do significant work with senators and congressmen. I hope that here, let's say, there are indeed some clear and unmistakable indications that things are not quite as bad as they may seem today, and that in fact this situation really can be corrected.
No matter how events unfold, the armed forces of Ukraine are not standing still. Within the 425th Separate Assault Regiment Skala, the 1st Assault Motorcycle Brigade in the armed forces of Ukraine has appeared, whose key task is to seize positions through rapid breakthroughs.
CNN has published shocking new evidence, video and intercepted audio showing the execution of Ukrainian prisoners of war. The material was provided by Ukrainian intelligence. It appears to show a war crime committed by Russian troops in the Zaporizhia region back in November 2024. Ukrainian soldiers were gunned down. The group's commander was taken captive. Right now, thousands of Ukrainian soldiers remain in Russian captivity. From time to time, prisoner swaps take place. One of them, a proposed 1,000 for 1,000 exchange, was discussed recently in Turkey.
We're preparing a new exchange. Literally every day I get updates. We must bring all our people home, no doubt about that. We check every single name. We're doing everything we possibly can. Really, we're trying hard.
New threats from Moscow. Russia's Security Council Deputy Chairman Dmitry Medvedev says Western policy toward Russia could spark another world war. He claims Russia is being isolated by its geopolitical opponents. Details here.
While the world is watching the war and international conflicts, former Russian President Dmitry Medvedev has unexpectedly changed his tone and image. He stepped out of his usual role as a political provocateur and immersed himself in the role of a lawyer. At a legal forum in St. Petersburg, Medvedev transformed into a profound expert on international law, discussing how wars and conflicts are changing the global legal system.
I ask you to be patient. Lawyers do like to talk. So if I may, allow me as well to take a moment and reflect upon and dwell on issues that are connected not only with events from 80 years ago, but unfortunately with today's problems too.
Russia is once again threatening Ukraine with capitulation. On May 20th, at the St. Petersburg International Legal Forum, Medvedev made harsh statements directed at Ukraine as well.
As for the Ukrainian conflict, I'll be direct. The current Ukraine, which, as everyone knows, we absolutely do not like, I mean the political regime that exists there, nevertheless has one last chance, under certain conditions, after the end of military actions, to preserve some form of statehood or, if you prefer, some subjectivity under international law and to gain a chance for peaceful development.
He stated that Russia is ready for negotiations without preconditions, but taking into account the realities on the ground. Otherwise, according to him, Ukraine faces the path of unconditional surrender.
It should be remembered that there is another path for the Kiev regime, which has also been mentioned repeatedly. That is the path of unconditional surrender. Such a formula for peace also exists in international law. Yes, to be frank, many people in our country actually prefer this option much more.
Medvedev also emphasized that, allegedly, there are no individuals in Ukraine authorized to sign a peace agreement.
It has been stated more than once that among the main group of current figures in the Ukrainian regime, there are no individuals authorized to conclude a peace treaty. And that is a major problem. But I won't hide it. When it comes to the current Ukrainian nationalist state, inevitably other questions arise as well. With whom, in this case, can we even negotiate peace? And why, when discussing the Ukrainian crisis, is Kyiv mentioned much less often than Europe and Washington? And what about the sovereignty of this state, no matter how we feel about it?
And he added that what is needed in the current situation is peace, not just a ceasefire.
What is urgently needed is not only negotiations, but also the development of procedures for peaceful conflict resolution themselves, which will help achieve not just a ceasefire in a specific conflict, as Russia keeps emphasizing, but lasting peace for a long time, ideally for centuries, on a global scale.
He expressed doubt about the peaceful intentions behind the initiative to deploy peacekeeping forces on the territory of Ukraine, stating that this could lead to a larger military conflict. In addition, he made harsh statements directed at the West, warning of the possibility of a new world war and the destruction of humanity. He accused Western countries of attempting to isolate Russia and disrupt dialogue, which, according to him, could lead to a global catastrophe.
Attempts to divide countries into different categories, to isolate or demonize geopolitical competitors, as we see happening toward our country, and to disrupt dialogue under hateful slogans, is a direct path to a new world war.
Medvedev has previously spoken about the possibility of total war and the annihilation of humanity if the West does not realize the need to establish a geopolitical balance.
Ukraine is fighting for freedom. Support independent Ukrainian journalism so we can keep showing the world the truth about this war. Click the link in the description and become our sponsor. Together to victory. And hey, hit that like button, it really helps the channel. Next week, peace talks? The Vatican may host preliminary discussions between Ukraine and Russia on a potential ceasefire. That's according to Finnish President Alexander Stubb. He also talked about the role of the United States, saying the US has not stepped away from its mediator role, but is now bringing Europe to the table too. But Bild sees it differently. The German outlet reports that Donald Trump is no longer interested in a ceasefire in Ukraine, and that his stance has weakened the position of German Chancellor Friedrich Merz. Just days ago, Merz gave the Kremlin an ultimatum. More sanctions would follow, but now it seems no support from Washington. So according to the article, Merz and other EU leaders are left without a partner. Well, I'd add the word temporarily left without a partner. The only question is, how long will this temporarily last? Now, you see, if you read these two stories in reverse order, they sound much more optimistic. First, Bild brings the fear, then Stubb comes in to calm the things down. But in the end, the message stays the same. We'll keep watching and maybe, just maybe, we'll understand Trump's position. Or maybe not. After all, it's Trump we're talking about. By the way, he says the US will soon build a new missile defense system called the Golden Dome. So what exactly is it, and who is supposed to protect from whom?
Donald Trump has officially launched the Golden Dome air defense system. He announced this during a briefing at the White House.
I am pleased to announce that in one big, beautiful bill, $25 billion will be allocated for the Iron Dome to help start construction. This is the initial amount. We are talking about a total cost of $175 billion for this project when it is completed.
The program aims to create a network of hundreds of different satellites to detect, track and potentially intercept incoming missiles. Trump is confident that the Golden Dome will be able to protect 100% from all missiles, including hypersonic ones. But creating such a system is not that simple, and it's not just a matter of funding. It is necessary to integrate many different systems together.
The Golden Dome is not a system, it's going to be, I would say, an umbrella concept for bringing a lot of things together, for stitching together the fabric of data that needs to be brought together as an integration of all these different sensors and an integration of all these different capabilities into something coherent and operational. It is necessary to stitch together all the sensors of the Department of Defense and commercial sensors, for example, in the continental United States, which are used for weather monitoring or air traffic control, or all of these things.
The idea of creating a Golden Dome emerged after the Iron Dome system in Israel demonstrated its outstanding effectiveness. Trump signed an order to develop an appropriate missile defense system. The document states that the threat of the use of ballistic, hypersonic, and cruise missiles is the most catastrophic threat facing the United States. The ambitious U.S. program is designed to counter threats from China and Russia. The Golden Dome is expected to be operational as early as 2029.
Canada has already announced that it also wants to be part of the Golden Dome, and we will talk with them to ensure they are protected as well. As always, we will help Canada. The system should be fully operational by the end of my term. So we have just over 3 years.
The Pentagon has long warned that existing missile defense systems are unable to keep up with the new missile technologies being developed by Russia and China. And the war in Ukraine has shown that at present there is no tool that can provide 100% protection against a massive missile strike. Experts in the missile field say that 175 billion is an impressive sum, but the system cannot be launched as quickly as Trump wants.
To make progress, it is necessary to use experience in software development as well as existing missile defense systems. $175 billion is a lot of money, but developing and implementing the system will probably take 10 years.
Despite Trump's claims, as he asserts, to have launched the project and allocated the first $25 billion, funding for the Golden Dome is tied to a contentious reconciliation bill that continues to face significant hurdles in Congress. One industry expert following the program told Reuters that if the appropriations bill does not pass, funding for the Iron Dome may not materialize. Also this month, the Congressional Budget Office estimated that the cost of the Golden Dome over 2 decades could be $831 billion. And even for the American defense budget, that's a lot of money. So Trump's bold statements may once again fail to come true.
Meanwhile, drama in Washington. At the House Foreign Affairs Committee meeting, Democrat Bill Keating asked Secretary of State Marco Rubio whether Russia is the aggressor. Rubio said, yes, Russia invaded Ukraine. So far, so good. But when asked whether Putin is a war criminal, Rubio dodged the question.
The person we're negotiating with, Vladimir Putin, is he a war criminal?
Well, I think you can look at instances that have happened there and certainly characterize them as war crimes, but our intent is to end the war.
Is he a war criminal?
We can't end the war without talking to Mr. Putin.
That's pretty simple. Is he a war criminal?
Well, that's
this man we're negotiating with, Vladimir Putin. Is he a war criminal? That's not tough.
But what? I'm trying to answer your question by telling you that we're trying to end the war here.
Go ahead.
No, it's not a simple answer.
You are equivocating, sir. Just answer the question.
I'm answering your question, and the answer is that war crimes have been committed, no doubt. And who's responsible for that? There will be time and place for that accountability. But right now, the job is to end the war.
So you won't answer the question.
If we don't end the war, people are going to get
reclaiming
killed.
my time.
Here's what's going on, in my opinion. Putin is a war criminal officially. The International Criminal Court in Hague has issued a warrant for his arrest. He's accused of unlawfully deporting children from Ukraine to Russia. But if Rubio says this out loud, diplomatic talks between the US and Russia, over. And maybe the White House just isn't ready for that. Yet. A murder in Madrid. Andrei Portnov, a former advisor of Ukraine's fugitive ex-president Yanukovych, was shot dead in Spain. He was wanted for treason. Portnov was considered one of the architects of Russia's occupation of Crimea and helped write the anti-Maidan laws back in 2014. Spanish police are investigating.
The victim had injuries incompatible with life, caused by at least 3 gunshot wounds. So, the emergency crews could only confirm the person's death.
One theory, a death issue. But here's a question. Who was giving money to a pro-Russian politician hiding out from justice? Exactly. That's all for today. Thank you for being with us. We read your comments and feel your support. Strength to our defenders. Glory to Ukraine. Like, subscribe, and see you next time.